Hello and welcome back to Jules Math Tools. In our session today, this is part 3 on converting our decimal numbers into a percentage. And if you're ready, let's get started. So in our session today on converting our decimal numbers into percentage, for this one, we're going to be using two different methods apart from the one that we already saw in part 1 and 2. For this method, we're going to be using our fraction. So what I'm going to be doing is changing my decimal number 3 and 1/10 into a fraction first. I remember that we did this already in an earlier video where I showed you how you convert these numbers into mixed fractions. And I reminded you that your 3, which is in front of the decimal point, is your whole number. Your 1 would be your numerator, and the position of your 1, which is the tenth, would be your denominator. So now that I have converted this decimal number into its mixed fraction form, what I'm going to be doing now is only using the fractional part of this number and multiplying it to my 100%. And now I'm going to begin simplifying, and because I can divide 10 by 10 and I can divide 100 by 10, I will reduce my fraction into its simplest form. So I now have 1 times 10%, which is equal to 10%. So that's the fractional part of my number. Now another thing that you need to pay attention to is because we have 3 wholes. And I want you to remember that 3 wholes means that I have 3 times 100%. So that means that I have 3 whole 100%. So my 3 times my 100% will equal to 300%. And we're going to take that 300% for my whole number and add that to my 100%, which will equal to 310%. Okay, so I'm going to also show you another fractional way that you could have also done this. Remember that you have your 3 and 1/10. You could have also decided to change this into a mixed fraction, which is 10 times my 3 and add that to my 1 all over my numerator of 10. So 10 times 3 is 30, and 30 plus 1 will equal to 31/10. And then you could have taken your 31/10 and again multiply that to your 100%. And again, we could simplify, and we can take our fraction and simplify by dividing both numbers by 10. So 10 divided by 10 is 1. 100 divided by 10 is 10. So we'll now have 31 being multiplied to 10%, which will equal to 310%. So these are just two alternative methods that you could also use to convert your decimal numbers into percentage. You can decide to change it into a mixed fraction and then multiply, but you have to remember that in multiplying, both parts of the fraction, which is the whole number, which was our 3, and the fractional part, which is our 1/10, both has to be multiplied to 100% and then their totals added together. And remember, I demonstrated a similar method to this when we converted mixed fractions into percentages. And I'll also post the link for that below for you in the description box so that you can also view that video on how we converted mixed fractions into percentages. Okay, so for our final step, we're going to be converting this number, which is our 7 and 3/10, into a percentage by using its separate parts. I remember that this was something that I mentioned to you before in another video where you could have converted your decimal number into a percentage by separating the parts. And when I refer to separating the parts, that's separating the whole number and the decimal part of your number, where we have 7 being added to our 0.3. And then we'll take both parts of these numbers and multiply them to our percentage. So 100% will be multiplied to 7, which would equal to 700%. 3/10 would also be multiplied to my 100%. which will equal to 30%. And then I'm going to take these two parts, which is my 700%, and add that to my 30%, which will equal to 730%. Okay, so again, these are just additional methods that you can use and try and practice on how to convert fractions, convert decimal numbers into a fraction and then into percentage, or take the decimal number, separate the parts, and then multiply the parts separately into percentages. So these are just alternative methods that you can play with, test your skills, test your methods to see if you really know how to change your decimal numbers into percentages. And when you're ready again, remember that you can always return back to Jules Math Tools, where we make math easy.